Hello everyone and welcome to our final webinar of the year. What is keeping business owners awake at night? I'm pleased to say that I'm joined today by Prue Greenfield, who is Principal Lawyer at Birch & Co Lawyers, and Alice Rue, who is a partner at SMB Advisory. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
Okay, so this was actually Alice's idea, the topic for this webinar, which was to consult AI, so bard.com, and ask the application what is keeping business owners awake at night. And it spat out a bunch of topics for us to go through today. So we won't tell you what they are right now. We'll go through them in order. But yeah, some interesting ones there, I think, and definitely quite relevant at the moment. I think if you're in Sydney, you would be thinking probably the heat is what's keeping business owners awake at night at the moment. But unfortunately, Bard didn't spit that one out. But let's get going. Now, just for people who aren't familiar with Creditor Watch, we are Australia's leading B2B credit reporting bureau. We have a range of credit risk management tools that run the gamut from onboarding with digital customer onboarding tools through to account management, so monitoring and alerts. If you set up a watch list for your customers, you're automatically alerted via email when any of their details change. And finally, debt collection and invoicing tools, accounts receivables tools, which are fully automated. They have been proven to increase your collections rate and also provide a valuable productivity gain, meaning that you don't have to manually chase outstanding invoices. We also have a bunch of unique data. Creditor Watch's credit reports have more than 50 data inputs from private and public sources. Our unique data includes our payment default data from our unique integrations with accounting packages. We have mercantile inquiries, corporate ATB data that is unique to us as well, and our geo risk data that is highlighted every month in our business risk index. I urge you to go and check that out at creditorwatch.com.au/business risk index. We have risk profiles on more than 350 regions around Australia that's updated monthly, so check that out as well. All right, let's get going. The 5 things that are keeping business owners awake at night, according to bard.com. Number 1, economic uncertainty. Not really a surprise. Businesses in Australia are under a lot of stress at the moment from rising interest rates, high inflation, which is creating cost pressure for businesses. Rents and commercial property prices are through the roof. Utilities prices, power prices are at sky high. Insurance premiums are rising, fuel costs are high. And then interest rates have obviously had an impact at the other end, impacting demand as well. So consumer demand has dropped off quite a bit. And we're seeing business confidence at near record lows as well. So yeah, it's a pretty grim out there for small businesses. Well, I should say businesses of all sizes. And it's shaping up to be a pretty tough 2024. This is reflected in our business risk index data, which is showing a considerable slide in the average value of invoices. They're down 34% year on year. And you can see there since, pre-COVID, pardon me, we've seen almost a 50% drop in the average value of invoices. Now, this has a ripple effect throughout the supply chain. It affects businesses of all sizes and across all industries. So it has a contagion effect throughout the economy. Creditor credit inquiries we're seeing are down as well. So that's a reflection of credit inquiries are the number of lookups that we have on the Credit to Watch platform. So they have dropped because of the drop in business activity. There's fewer businesses extending credit to other businesses, so they don't need to look up a credit inquiry on another business. And it's also a reflection of fewer businesses applying for bank loans. So banks come to us and run credit inquiries when they have a credit loan application as well. So yeah, there's a troubling decline in that as well. And then external administrations consistently now above pre-COVID levels. That would not be a surprise to anybody. We read a lot of that in the press, particularly, around the high-profile, pardon me, collapses we've seen in the construction industry. We're seeing the hospitality industry also under quite a bit of pressure as consumers tighten their belts and reduce discretionary spending. People are choosing to eat in at home rather than going out to restaurants or, having lunches at cafes. So yeah, a lot of pressure under that industry. Trade payment defaults, again, is increasing. They're the number of defaults that businesses are registering against other businesses on our platform. So this is unique data to Credit to Watch. Now, this is a key indicator because what it shows is there's a strong correlation between trade payment defaults and business failures. So when a business has a default registered against it, it has around a 24% chance of going insolvent in the next 12 months. For 2 defaults registered against it, that rises to around 33%, and then around 44% for 3 defaults, and it continues to rise up to around 66% for businesses with 4 or more defaults registered against them. So there's a very, very strong correlation there between trade payment defaults and business failure. And here's just finally our business failure rate prediction chart. So our modelling shows that the business failure rate is expected to grow from around the current 4.2% up to around 5.8% over the next 12 months. So that's again going to be a pretty tough time for businesses in 2024. So what actions can businesses take to mitigate the impacts of these challenges? I'll hand it over to Prue and Alice to take us through that.
Thanks so much, Michael. I really appreciate that. And it's really good to see the data there, which actually reflects what we're hearing anecdotally and obviously what is being, wherever the data is coming from for our AI research as well. But I think it's brilliant to be able to actually see that data in true form to show and to evidence that what we've been seeing and talking about for a while is actually what is happening, and that's quite good. And I think it's the uncertainty that we're talking about that really is problematic. It's not necessarily that prices are high, cost of living is high, interest rates are going up. It is that, but we don't know. Like, we don't know whether inflation is going to continue to rise or whether it's going to come back. We don't know whether interest rates have peaked or they're going to go, much further or come back. We don't know, what the construction industry looks like in terms of flow-ons to house prices and these sorts of things. And it's that uncertainty, I think, that we find the business owners sort of get a little bit paralysed with, in terms of we don't know what to do next. Because if we're thinking short term, one decision can really have severe impacts. And what we're saying, and what I'm saying in terms of what you can do, is we do need to think with a slightly longer term lens on and really try and take control of the situation that business owners can find themselves in. And that's very difficult. That is very difficult. And sometimes it's really uncomfortable, to be honest. And sometimes our human instinct is to sort of just keep doing what we're doing every day, work really hard, feel like we're achieving things, and just crossing our fingers and hoping for the best. But there are some solutions that, you know, can help business owners take control. And I mean, I definitely advocate for those. I'm sure Prue would as well. And it's around really understanding your business. It's around understanding what might happen if everything goes wrong. And in, you know, the accounting game, we call these things sensitivity analysis. We look at the cash flow, we look at what's expected over the next 12 months or so. Then what might happen if our biggest client goes into administration? You know, it's not something we want to think about. It's not something that, you know, is going to be a lovely thing, especially, you know, close to Christmas or whatever, to try and contemplate. But it really does work to ask yourselves those questions and to test what happens then to your cash flow if you take that out. And then what can you do about it? So, for example, if that thing, you know, you're in a business, you've got a lot of, say, construction clients, or you've got some big hospitality clients, and there's a risk that your major client or a number of your major clients may go into administration. Okay, what would that do? You take them out, your cash flow is affected. That's not going to be great for anybody's business. Is there anything we can do to help that? Yes, there is. Is it that we put on, you know, watch alerts so we know earlier when things are going to happen, so that we can, you know, take steps towards, you know, either locking down certain things or seeking some advice around what we could do? Is it that we get debtors insurance so that we know that at least if something does happen, it may not be, you know, the full amount and the ongoing upside that we would have from continuing trade with a particular client, but maybe we get a little bit of compensation back from that. And we don't know to explore those options unless we know what might go wrong. So as uncomfortable as it is, it's really understanding what might go wrong and, you know, auditing your current situation. And auditing is a word that we throw around a lot, and everybody, I think, in businesses like audits, that's it, you know, high and big, and we're only small maybe, and we don't need to look at that. But all what that means is checking in. Have a look at your business and check in and see where your exposure is. Have a look and see, well, what don't you control, and how might you potentially be able to exercise some level of control over that.
I think that's a key. I think that's a key point, Alice, is to take proactive measures ahead of any sort of adverse event occurring, rather than being forced into a reactive position after things happen. Because you know, you can do things like you know, check your ledger to, you know, maybe address credit terms with customers that are potentially a risk, or, you know, things like that that could save you a lot of pain down the track, right?
Yeah, oh, look, absolutely. And mitigating against that risk, you know, in terms of, you know, and it's not always the best thing to do, but when you have clients that, you know, maybe are late payers, or that maybe, you know, there's uncertainty around their success, is there some way that you might be able to get a lesser amount in now through either a factoring or through an assignment, so you have the cash flow and the potential failure is somebody else's problem? And these are all options that I don't think are always readily obvious, you know, to business owners unless they start thinking about them. And that's where we're saying be proactive, exactly what you're saying, Michael, be proactive. Think about these things. If you've got questions of what happens if, you know, I'm sure Prue and definitely myself, you know, we're always happy to take, you know, very, you know, obscure questions about, oh, look, I don't think it's going to happen, but if this was to happen, what would be the outcome? I answer those questions all the time on very hypothetical basis. And it just allows, I think, business owners to grow their paradigm and to understand what the situation looks like. Just really quickly, financing and borrowing options, just understand again what it is. It doesn't mean you're going to change your financier, but it always pays to understand what options are out there. I always say as well, it's easier to refinance and it's easier to obtain more finance when things are good. So, you know, if you think that you might need extra room in your facility, or you think that you need to get some sort of leasing or something in place for your infrastructure or IT, do it, you know, before you think things are going to maybe be a little bit problematic. At least have that room to move so that you have some working capital there. And director penalty notices, I think Prue and I have spoken till the cows come home, but Prue, I'll let you have a chat about those, which I think are super important.
Yeah, really important. Thanks, Alice. As we all know, the ATO are now heavily enforcing unpaid tax debts. there's $1 billion left over from COVID, and it's really important, I guess, not to ignore the ATO because then it can become dire. And then a director penalty notice, which is a notice that makes the director personally liable if it's not dealt with for the debts of the company, can be served. So key thing is really to engage with the ATO. If you're unable to pay the outstanding tax debts, engage with them, see if you can enter into payment plans before it gets to that serious situation where you may be personally liable. A couple of tips as well: make sure your ASIC address is up to date, because they will serve any director penalty notices to that last address. So if you miss it, bad luck. It's you're not aware. And yeah, obviously speak with your accountant regularly, because they can see things on the tax portal. So I think key message there is just, don't ignore the tax debts and engage with the ATO and deal with them before there's a personal liability for the director yourself. So that's it. Yeah, that's a big one at the moment, as we know.
Great. Thanks, Prue.
No worries.
All right, well, let's move on to the second thing that AI tells us is keeping business owners awake at night. Cybersecurity. Again, no real surprise. We're seeing a significant rise in the number of attacks on Australian businesses. The latest report from the Australian Signals Directorate has reported that there were 94,000 cyber attacks in Australia in the last financial year, which is a 23% increase on the year prior. So that's a massive massive jump in 1 year. Interestingly, the top 3 cybercrimes were emails being compromised, business fraud through business emails, and online banking fraud. So they're not, we hear a lot about hacks and things like that, but it's not actually, it seems like it's much easier for online criminals to be using fraud as a way to, get money out of people and money out of businesses, rather than, going down the hacking path. The average cost of cyber attacks has also increased in the last financial year. So, if you're a small business copping a 50 grand hit for a cyber attack, that's going to, seriously impact your bottom line, and also medium businesses. Interestingly, medium businesses, the average cost was higher than for large businesses. I'm no cyber expert, but I would assume that's because larger businesses tend to have more resources to throw at the problem. They're able to invest more in protecting themselves. So yeah, that would be my suspicion on why that's a bit lower for them. And just looking at the impact, the top 10 industries that were impacted, government, state and federal are the top 2 there. And also businesses that are heavily government supported, like education and training, healthcare and social assistance, quite heavily impacted as well. So a bit of work to do there for the government agencies. And on the private side, it's financial and insurance services that sort of, professional services, sorry, at the top there. They obviously are a big target because they hold a lot of private data, and the same for financial insurance services. There's a big incentive there, given that, they're holding everybody's cash. So yeah, they're the biggest targets on the private side. But as a small and medium-sized business, what can you do to mitigate the risk on your business? I mean, it's everybody says it's a case of not if, but when you'll suffer an attack. So it's the onus is on you as a business owner to manage this risk. But Alison, Prue, what can our viewers out there do to mitigate the impact on their businesses?
Yeah, I'm happy to run with this one. So I actually spoke with a colleague of mine who's a software solutions provider in the cybersecurity industry to get some insights on what he's seeing. And he gave some really, I guess, basic tips. I mean, as we can see there, yes, it's probably important to have insurance and use a consultant, but I think it's more down to some bare bones sort of advice, which a lot of businesses might already be doing. But his advice was having that perimeter security set up, that antivirus, malware, hacking protection, something like Norton. There's a lot of products on the market, but simple as that, because some businesses just sort of, are still in that, username, password, which is obviously a great risk. So there needs to be things set up in place. A lot of businesses now have multi-factor authentication. I know my security is just getting into this webinar took a while. So, it's important to have those protections, which is, on all your devices that are connected to the business. So phones, computers, everything that you do use. He told me that it was the Medibank incident that happened was through an executive that got hacked through LinkedIn. So, something as simple as that. And that caused, a huge issue, as everyone probably would have heard in the media. The other advice was people think it's an attack on the business, and it's actually the human PII, which is your personal identifier information. We always provide, you go into a retail and they say, oh, can we have your email, your date of birth, so we can send you, memberships and discounts and a present on your birthday, things like that. And that actually can be an issue because retailers aggregate that data and they sell it to marketing organizations who then get hacked. So yeah, it's scary, and it's sad that we've had to come to that, but that's sometimes how these hackers are getting that information when you just as an individual go into a retailer and give your personal information. The other advice was don't plug your phone into public chargers, which we probably all do, like in airports and hotels and things like that, because that is at risk. The information can be drained, and try and avoid public Wi-Fi networks. I know I was overseas recently. I use them everywhere. Wouldn't even have thought of that. So they're just some really simple, I guess, solutions that any business owner can think about and implement, in their daily activity. Obviously important to, use a consultant and have that insurance as well, but they're just some day-to-day, I guess, hacks that I was given that I thought were really interesting to share. So yeah, big area, and only going to get worse probably.
Look, absolutely. I've just got a couple of quick things to add to that. Sorry, Michael, if that's all right. It's huge area. I agree. Just two really quick things from me. One is you can have all of the protections and all of the systems put in place, but you need to train your people. And you can do that really easily. We've got a few things that we do internally, and I've seen other colleagues do, in terms of having actual test phishing emails and those sorts of things sent out to see who's clicking on them, if anybody, and understanding where your risks are. And so I think there's a lot of training that needs to be done internally with teams as well to, to make sure you solidify all of the amazing infrastructure that's put in place. And the only other thing I was going to say as well is, and probably flows on from that, a lot of the compromising situations that I've heard of have been where there's been amazing, systems set up and lots of passwords and lots of protection of data, but it's when people have downloaded whatever's in the system to Excel so that they can formulate their reports or so that they can deal with things separately, that's when it's been exposed and been compromised. And so again, it's that people situation and making sure they're using everything as well as they potentially can be. That was that.
Sure. And I guess, yeah, given that, it's a game of leapfrog really with the cyber criminals and then protection, it's super important to regularly review your levels of security as well, because things are evolving and moving so quickly that your level of protection could quite quickly become outdated. So it's it's really important to regularly review your security levels as well. Okay, let's move on to the third reason, the third thing that's keeping Australian business owners awake at night, and that is talent shortages. Okay, so there's been a lot in the press about the national skills shortage. That you know, a lot of it has come from the cut in migration. There are fewer skilled migrants coming to the country, but yeah, look, Jobs and Skills Australia released a report in October this year that has some pretty troubling numbers there. 36% of occupations in Australia are experiencing a skills shortage, which was up from 2022. The health sector was the worst impacted at 82%. So big shortage of doctors, nurses. We're hearing a lot about that in the media. And then white collar occupations. Prue, you'd be happy to know that solicitors is one of them, so your job's safe. And accountants as well. So a big shortage there. Pardon me. Now, given the low levels of unemployment, this you know, just exacerbates the problem as well. So yeah, it's you know, a tough time. You know, especially when, you know, in the age that we're in, with skills being so important now for you know, and particularly around the white collar occupations for you know, technological advancement. And Australia is already really on the back foot compared to, you know, a lot of countries in Europe and the US. So yeah, some work to be done there. So what can you do as a business owner to manage the skills shortage? Over to you again, Prue and Alice.
Did you want to go, Alice?
No, I can. Yeah, it's a tough one. I think everybody's feeling it at the moment. It's a topic of discussion, especially within my networks, wherever we are. I think there's a lot that we can do, but I think there's a lot we need to be aware of as well. I think there's a real I think there's going to be a real tension coming into the next at least 12 months or the next period around that working from home and flexibility. I do the SMB Wisdom podcast, which comes out, and every year I do a reflection series, and I'm doing that at the moment. And I've recorded a number of those, and I've got to tell you that the situation dealing with working from home staff and tension has come up consistently in those, which I think is really quite interesting towards where people are at. I think there's people who want to be in the office at certain times, there's people who don't, there's people who need to be, there's people that don't. And it's very hard to look at, you know, overarching, I guess, policies and procedures around that. And you couple that with a lot, and we'll talk about, you know, different things later, but you couple that around with the regulation that's coming forward and what we need to do as employers to make sure our teams are safe and have sort of oversight over that. So I think we'll find that any organisation that has really good flexible workplace policies, hybrid working that works together, that's very inclusive and allows for their teams to interact virtually and physically, if you know, when you get that secret sauce, I think that's going to be something to cling to, and I think that's something that employees really want to go and, you know, drive towards. I also think that policies are really important in terms of sort of work-life policy. I think employers need to understand that, especially some of the younger members of our workforce now just aren't prepared to put in the hours that maybe some of us used to do, you know, at the similar level and at the similar sort of wage structure, I guess. And we just need to, again, similar to what I said, you know, at the initial points, is just be aware of that and understand what that means for our business and our productivity, and how that moves us forward. But I think there's some good policies to look at and talk. My big thing is always talk to your fellow business owners. What are they doing with their staff? You know, I know that, and we talk a lot about wellness days, and we talk a lot about, you know, incentives for our team. There's a lot, you know, going on in terms of sort of, you know, employee share situations and buy-ins, and trying to get that sort of investment from the team in the business in which they're working. And I think, you know, when you've got good team members, it's always just pays to understand that they are good team members and to compensate them accordingly, and try and understand what life might be like without them, and that it might be a lot, you know, tougher, and it might be worth, you know, thinking about their value to your business ahead of time before perhaps losing them. Prue, what have you got to add to that?
Yeah, I look very similar, Alice. I guess, yeah, we've all come from that COVID era where, you know, working from home became, and I'm working from home now. So, you know, it's something that, yeah, it's, you know, it's very valued by employees. But yeah, there are a lot of tensions around it. So it will depend on the business requirements. But I think certainly listening to your employees, like you said, and making sure they feel valued. We have the same. We have a lot of different events and wellness days, things like that, to make people feel like, yes, it's a great place to work. But yeah, very similar, Alice, in terms of, yeah, I think it's just about listening to and understanding your staff and not letting it get to the point where there is a problem and someone wants to leave. Like, just, yeah, making sure there is engagement. And that does often need to be in the office. So I guess having, you know, depending on the workplace, having that really good balance where you have that connection, because people can get lost, but also that flexibility to say, yes, you know, if it's appropriate, you can have those work from home days. So yeah, it's certainly interesting times with that, and trying to retain good staff for sure.
Just one other thing I wanted to mention there is, I think, and I could be wrong here, but my sort of feeling, and I've had a few discussions about this recently as well, is that just the way that the world is and the way that life is at the moment is, I think that there's less of a demarcation between our, shall I say, professional personalities and our personal personalities, or who we are at work and who we are at home. And I think where people can find that there is acceptance and there is inclusion around that, and they don't have to try and put a mask on, and they don't have to try and, you know, be something different in their 9-to-5 life as opposed to what they are outside of that, I think that's really valued as well. And it's better from an authenticity point of view. And I think there's a lot of upside for businesses to have a really great diverse workforce where people can express different views. And I think that's something that people find a lot more comfortable, because you can waste a lot of energy trying to be somebody that you're not, merely to fit within the paradigm of a workplace that you think you need to fit into.
Yeah, good point, Alice. I'd just like to point out why we've got the Great Place to Work badge there. So Credit to Watch is a certified Great Place to Work. So what that means is that we've met certain criteria to be able to get that certification. We've always, I guess, prided ourselves on our approach to looking after employees for some time now, but we just thought it would be good for people to know that we are committed, and you know, when people are, you know, looking for work, if they see that we're a great place to work, it might make you know, their decision a bit easier to come and work for Credit to Watch. But you know, we do really walk the walk as well as talk the talk. It's Credit to Watch has got a below average rate of staff turnover, and the company really does look after its employees with a number of initiatives along the lines of what you guys have just mentioned: wellness days, employee share plans. There's also things like you know, staff boat days, free legal advice, gym membership, flexible work hours, you know, extended parental leave periods, things like that, that just make employees feel that they're, you know, much more appreciated, and the, you know, things like the employee share plan as well. They're invested in the future of the business. But yeah, it's really had a fairly significant impact on staff satisfaction, which is up around 92%. And yeah, as I said, we've got a far below average rate of staff turnover as well.
Excellent. Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Yes. And I should mention as well, we've been certified as a one of the best places to work by AFR Boss under the financial services category. So another little tick for us there as well. Right, let's move on to number 4. The fourth top reason that business owners are being kept awake at night, and that is regulatory compliance. Okay, what are the challenges there, Alison Prue?
Well, there's a few. I might list off a few of the challenges, and then I think Prue, being the the resident legal advisor in the room, can help us discuss, how we can best deal with them. But look, I think, and this harks back to number 1 again, is just in terms of that uncertainty. There's so much going on in the landscape for businesses at the moment. There's so much legislation change, and there's so much sort of social and political change that it actually is impacting the regulation landscape a lot. There's been some pretty significant legislation brought in, Prue, in terms of unfair contract terms that I think, whilst probably relate significantly to the, the big telcos and the big ends of town, and you can see that I think will be very impactful on businesses of all sizes. We've had some changes in terms of the National Franchising Registrar. There's been a lot of emphasis on the employee contractor debate and who sits there. And not only that, I think there's been a lot recently in terms of, casual workers versus part-time workers and different, entitlements debates there. We obviously see very regularly a number of organisations being highlighted for underpayment and what that means. We talked about cyber before. There's a lot of regulation coming in now around where businesses actually are required to do certain things in terms of their cyber exposure. We have a lot of privacy issues. Climate reporting is going to be a big one, I think, in the next couple of years in terms of organisations. I think as soon as next year, you've got a number of sort of larger organisations that really have to up the ante in terms of their climate reporting. But as recent or as near as 2027, 26, 27, I think all businesses will need an element of climate reporting in their business. And so there's quite a lot of change in terms of regulatory compliance out there. People would ask, what do you do about that? And my answer every day of the week is have a good legal advisor that you can sort of turn to help you through those and can keep you up to date. And Prue, maybe you can explain a little bit how you can do that, and making sure that your clients and your contacts, can be comfortable in trying to understand that, someone's got their back in this area.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe I'll just, talk mostly about the unfair contract terms, which I've spoken about a lot, but that is a big thing that's come in 9th of November, where this year, where now, as previously an unfair contract term in, say, your terms and conditions could have been declared void by a court. Now the ACCC can apply penalties, and it can be up to 50 million for a company, which is huge. So it's also not a matter of, okay, it applies to certain businesses with employees of up to 100, but it also applies to who you're dealing with. So it's really important to remember, even if you're a big business and you think, oh, this doesn't apply to me, if your customers are in that category, it applies to you. So it almost applies to everyone. And it's a matter of, yes, engaging with a legal advisor in terms of looking at your terms and conditions. And what you need to look at is, okay, each clause, do a deep dive, and is it reasonably necessary for the legitimate business interests of the company? And some clauses, of course, are, because otherwise the company can't operate. Things to do with IP or, certain warranties or, you know, delivery requirements, things like that that might affect a supply chain. Things like that are reasonably necessary, but it's ones where there might be an overabundance of security, for example, or something is too one-sided, unfair in terms of maybe you're charging a cancellation fee, for example, when you might still be on selling those goods. Is that fair? So just things like that. So that's a really big one that everyone needs to be aware of, and yeah, very important to not ignore it, because I can see that a lot of things may be happening in that area next year and the year after, and having a really good look at your terms and conditions, and yes, engaging with your legal advisors to look at those as well. So that is a big one in this industry, and like Alice said, those other things as well. You know, if there's any, like there's a new national franchise register that everyone needs to comply with and put all their information on there. So again, what do I need to do? I think the key is really engaging with your advisors to find out what you need to do. Other things as well is, you know, getting insurance for legal costs. And Alice spoke before about debtors insurance, which I know a lot of companies have if they have to write off a debt. So just really looking at all of your options to deal with all this regulatory compliance that has come in and will be coming in. So yeah, a lot going on, a lot to think about, but definitely not to panic, and just to get the right advice is key.
And can I just interject? I totally agree with all of that, Prue. And just to add to that, I think it's really important for everybody, not just business owners, but to understand that whilst, you know, in terms of what we do day in and day out, we've probably got a really good handle on things, but there's a whole world of stuff out there that we don't know what we don't know. And until we actually engage with our advisors, or we engage with, you know, different, and it might be that, you know, it's VECI or it's the Chamber of Commerce or whomever it might be, and, you know, just to understand what's going on in the framework, because having a head in the sand approach where you just don't know what the issues even are, that can be absolutely disastrous. And at least if you've got a good set of advisors around you, they can sort of at least show you what it is that you don't know, so that you can know that you don't know that. Anyway,
Yeah.
my take on it.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in your own bubble, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Sure.
All right, let's move on to our final thing that is keeping business owners awake at night: technological change. Okay, now this is this can be a challenging one for, you know, business operators, particularly SME operators that are already quite busy trying to get money in the door. It can be a fairly daunting thing for a lot of people as well. Would you like to take us through this, Alice?
Oh, look, happy to. I think it's funny when you say people can probably be a bit too busy for it. It reminds me of that old adage where they talk about meditation and say if you're too busy to meditate, then you actually need to meditate twice as much. And I think that's very similar in terms of the automation world. If you're too busy to automate, you need a lot of automation, because
Absolutely.
it just will take you a lot, you know, make your life so much easier. And that's not to say that it's a set and forget by any stretch, but it's just another tool that we can use, I think, to assist with our businesses. And when we're talking about things like talent shortages, you know, and other things, we need to make sure we're using the skills or the tools available to us to be able to use the human capital that we have as effectively as we can. I think people can get a little bit scared of AI. I've heard it said, you know, about AI will come and take all of our jobs, and, you know, soon you won't need a lawyer or an accountant because the robots will do it. But I'm firmly of the belief that AI or computers won't take jobs from the humans, but people who know how to use the AI or know how to use the computers will probably take the jobs from the humans that don't know how to do that. So it's an important part of our business to keep up with all of those things. Look, outsourcing is
I'd like to
amazing.
say something on AI as well. Sorry.
Go for it.
Yeah, look, I think it's important, if you're just sort of dipping your toes into AI as well, to remember that it's early days, right? It can perhaps be a bit daunting when we're hearing all about the potential of AI, which is massive, but it's still early days. And, you know, they talk about the 4 stages of AI: mechanical, analytical, intuitive, and empathetic. and we're still very much in the mechanical and analytical phase. So, you know, things like ChatGPT, things like that. And if you've, you know, if you have ever used a customer service chatbot, you'll know that there's not a lot of intuition or empathy going on. It's just still at the very mechanical and analytical stage. So if you think it, I think if you think of it in those terms, it becomes a little less daunting. And remember, at this stage, it's really just a productivity tool. And there's really a lot of simple steps that you can take as a business owner. We're sort of probably jumping ahead here to productivity enhancements, but you know, for lead gen, for content creation, for social media, simple things like that that you know, most people can grasp, can really make a huge benefit in terms of productivity.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think people might sort of think that it's something new and it's something, you know, that might be a bit daunting from time to time. But I think you'll find that most businesses actually use an element of AI without even knowing it within their systems and organisations at the moment. And it is about harnessing that in terms of the productivity. So, look, I think there's a lot that you can learn about it. There's a lot of things you can outsource. It's about just understanding, and there's a lot of, you know, YouTube videos, there's a lot of LinkedIn learnings, there's a lot of things that if you're wanting to understand a little bit more about how it can be used in your business, that you can explore that, and I would suggest that you do. I've found a lot of it quite interesting. The things I will say though is just be careful, because it is early days and you need to check it, and you need to make sure that it's fit for purpose, and you need to make sure that, you know, if you ask it to write a letter or you ask it to do something, that it actually is the letter that you want to send. And also, never put in any personal information or anybody else's personal information or anything that's sensitive into, you know, your chatbots or your chat GPTs, because that then forms a layer of information that is out in the public domain. And, you know, I think people need to just understand that that's where that goes. I think ChatGPT in particular has got a little bit better when drafting and doing things like that. It actually will prompt you now to say, make sure that this is actually what you want it to say, and that you've checked it with your legal advisor and those sorts of things. So those alerts are there. But I think it's there's so many automations and productivity enhancements there. And if you don't understand them and how they might be able to work for you, you might find that your competitors actually do and can then produce, you know, their output a little bit less expensively. You know, and in this market where we're all trying to do our bit to get ahead, it's pretty important to understand what, you know, what sort of playing field that we're on, and making that as level as we can.
Yeah, and just on that point, Alice, about, yeah, it sounds good. I haven't seen that, but ChatGPT giving that sort of, you know, warning, I guess, make sure this is correct, because I've heard of a lot of instances in the legal industry anyway, where people are going, oh, I'm just going to use ChatGPT and to write this letter or look up this decision, and it's been wrong. And then it's, you know, there's been severe consequences when there's a court hearing and then someone's relied on the information there without going to the proper source, and it's caused them to lose their legal case. So yeah, really important sort of tips there to not, yeah, like we say, AI is not going to replace the human element. We all will still have jobs and have a place to ensure that things are correct. So really, really good point there, Alice.
I think we rubbish in, rubbish out is a good thing to remember, right?
Totally.
The cloud, using cloud resources. Alice, did you want to touch on that?
Oh, look, I think, and this sort of harks back again to our whole working from home, and it then merges into the cyber stuff. But I think where you can work from anywhere and have your resources being maintained, you know, in a cloud-based, gone are the days where we had to have entire server rooms, right, in practices to maintain all the information. But you need to, again, make sure that your cloud providers are giving you the level of security that is expected of your business, because often cloud providers are, all your information is not being hosted in the same country that you are. And it might be that some of that, the regulation, internationally isn't as stringent as it is here, but you are covered by, or susceptible to the regulation in this country, and what you need to be able to do with that. So I think it's really important when you are sort of outsourcing, understanding some of that. But where your information is everywhere, it actually makes it a lot easier to be able to operate and have people everywhere contributing to your team.
Good to remember, thank you. And online tools, of course, I'd just like to provide a couple of CreditWatch examples of how online tools can help businesses. Our onboarding tool, Apply Easy, is a great productivity enhancer when you're taking on new customers and running credit checks. Manual credit checks where you're exchanging paper documents can sometimes take a couple of weeks to finalise, whereas Apply Easy can run credit checks in and have you trading with somebody in a matter of minutes. It helps avoid human error. So yeah, it's a really good tool, a cost-effective tool for businesses to onboard customers quickly and effectively. And then at the other end of the spectrum, Credit2Watch Collect is our collections tool, our accounts receivable tool that sends out automated reminders to businesses with Credit2Watch branded reminders. And that can also really help with, it means that your AR team can focus on higher value tasks rather than chasing payments. And it's also been proven, as I said earlier, to increase the collections rate, so keep more money coming into the business.
It's really quickly there, Michael, just as a plug that you may not realise is a really big pro for that, as well as if you're standing in my shoes as a liquidator and trying to recover preferences, we often will look at what's been done to know that the client or the creditor is aware that there might be trouble on that debtor front for recovery, and it's very difficult for a liquidator to show that the creditor had knowledge of insolvency or was doing something different in terms of their collections for a particular debtor, where there's automation and systems set up, and it really is that just after 7 days we issue this, after 14 days we issue this, then we go to demand, then we go to legal on everybody. It can actually provide a small level of protection in terms of, if something does happen down the track with one of those debtors, just adds an extra layer.
Absolutely.
Good point.
Great. Anything else to add there on technological change?
I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, Alice and Prue, for that great insight into what's keeping business owners awake at night. There's hopefully that will help people sleep a bit better.
We hope.
Going into the But yeah, thank you again for your time. That's been great. Now, if you'd like to know more about some of these online tools that we talked about, you can visit us at creditorwatch.com.au. If you have any more questions for Alice or Prue, we will include their details in the on the webpage where you can download this webinar. But thank you for watching, and we look forward to providing more webinars to you next year.